As the 2024 fantasy football draft season starts to heat up, these questions must be asked. What rookie is dropping? What rookie is rising? What did free agency do to your rookie mocks? Welcome to Club Fantasy. Welcome to Mocking with the Stars. Welcome into Mocking with the Stars. I am your host, Gator J. You can find me at FantasyJ77 over there on Twitter. My dude, Chris Battistal, is in the building. Yes, sir. The new co-host over here with Mocking with the Stars. You can find him at FF Chris B over there on Twitter. And tonight's star, weekly contributor for a fantasy sports writer for the New York Post, focusing on football and baseball since 2016. Amy's getting old. Also, the head of content for Fantasy Alarm and the host of the Fantasy Alarm Show on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, channel 87, Monday through Friday, 5 to 7, with the GM, Mr. Jim Bowden, a 20-year veteran of the industry, a fan of all sports, including baseball, which he's a Yankees fan, New York Rangers in hockey, and a lonely Jets fan, Mr. Howard Bender. Welcome to Mocking with the Stars, sir. How are you?
What is up, boys? Thank you so much for having me, man. Psyched to be here. It's nice to take a little breather from some of the baseball coverage to, get to roll out some football. I always keep it all in the back of my mind. And so, yeah, I'm psyched to get going here with you guys. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Oh, we appreciate you taking the hour or so that you are away from the fantasy baseball content that you are getting. I mean, you've got to be knee deep. Fantasy baseball drafts are flying right now.
Is the season.
Who is the 1-on-1? Is it Ronald Acuna Jr. again this year?
Oh, yeah, easily the 1-1, no doubt about it. I mean, that hasn't changed. Top 7, they're all the good power speed guys. We love them so much. And yeah, this is it's a ton of fun. I just got back from New York City from Tout Wars. I drafted in the AL only league. I was doing the broadcasts on SiriusXM for it Saturday and Sunday. So yeah, man. I mean, listen, I'm neck deep in baseball. I've got more stuff going on, but I'm like sitting there, and I was like, during the broadcast on Tout Wars, and on one hand we're sitting there talking about this National League only draft. The next thing I know is like, ooh, what did Justin Fields just become a Steeler? What's going on here? So I go through, you guys had Andrew Cooper on last week, and Coop runs he does the free agent tracker, does all of our NFL content here in the off season. And so I immediately just, I tore into everything that he wrote and ranked and did like that. So, absolutely loving it.
Yeah. I mean, Coop is above and beyond one of the best dudes in the space, as well as yourself. I mean, having you two on back-to-back shows, it feels like it's home. I mean, being able to, I don't know, scratch the skull of the tight end whisperer himself is just amazing. And then, being able to get you on here to, boost up him even more is phenomenal, Howard. We've got a Superflex half-point tight end premium mock we're going to do tonight. Ooh. Howard, like he said, just came back from New York. So instead of, pounding out a 4-round rookie mock and trying to get all the, talk in, we're just going to do 3 rounds tonight. We're going to get, try to get these 3 rounds in, get a little bit more analyst in, because, I mean, well, when you really think about it, after, 210, 211, somewhere in that range, the guys are dart throws anyway. At that point, it's really going to be hard to find the next Puka Nacua, should we say? So let's, Chris, you are on the clock at the 1-1. I'm going to go ahead and fire this thing up right now. And from everything we've seen so far, Howard, while you're up next, so I'm gonna let Chris talk through his process here. Who's the 101 right now? Is it Caleb Williams?
For me, yeah, it's Caleb Williams. I'm not looking to take a quarterback that might be a project. I'm not going to be mad if you want to reach up and take one of the hot wide receiver names. But if I'm in the position at the 101, I most likely want a cornerstone piece. And for me, projected to go to the Chicago Bears, that's Caleb Williams. They got the pieces around him. Everyone wants to complain about the offensive line, but the offensive line is probably top half in the league. They got the all-pro rookie, the first team all-pro in Darnell Wright. They got Braxton Jones coming back. Everything that they are building around the quarterback position for the Chicago Bears makes me happy to pick Caleb Williams here. And I'm ecstatic for everyone that is starting to fade Caleb Williams. That just means that if I have a later pick, I'm going to be able to get him for cheaper.
Yeah. Howard, you are on the clock here at the 1-2. With it being Superflex, are we still looking at quarterback here, or is this where you're like, you know what, screw it, I'm going, Harrison, or I'm going Neighbors right here?
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny. It is Superflex, and you sit and you wonder if you want to do that. If I were doing this, in like a brand new kind of a situation. And Superflex, if I was looking to rebuild a little bit, or even with like a win now mentality, I'd probably go like, a little fun and go JJ McCarthy, and just kind of eat into that hype. But I mean, how do you not go with Marvin Harrison Jr.? I mean, the dude is just an absolute stud. I mean, you got to hope that he lands somewhere. I mean, there's going to be a ton of trading going on with these top picks. So not 100% sure of who's going to be in that spot to grab Harrison, but whoever's in that spot to grab Harrison is doing it to utilize him. And then, in Dynasty also, it's nice lengthy career usually for wideouts too.
Yeah. So Howard, I'm going to send this to you. I want to go back to the Caleb Williams. Is Caleb the 101 across all formats for you as well?
I don't really know if he is. Probably. I mean, the Bears are really built for that right now. We've seen so many busts at the QB position over the years. Guys who are just these can't miss. I mean, look at Bryce Young struggling the way he is, even though we knew he would. We all said that that CJ Stroud was probably going to be the better QB for the NFL, but yet everybody still kind of leaned in on it. So. I probably, if I had the 1-1 in a Superflex Dynasty, would probably take Caleb Williams because you would know that he's at least getting that shot. And they've got the weaponry there for him. Love having a veteran like Keenan Allen to really help settle him in,
Yeah, the Bears, for, maybe it was just way free agency, worked out over the last year and a half, 2 years for them. They really did everything to put him in the right position. If it is Caleb Williams with the 101, which, we're all expecting it to be, but if it is, or when it is, they've definitely surrounded him with pieces, whether that's DJ Moore or DeAndre Swift, and now Keenan Allen to, most of the offensive line is about all they have left to do once they get Williams in the building, correct?
Yeah, I mean I'm not a DeAndre Swift fan. I'm not gonna lie, and and think that he's gonna be great for fantasy owners for the first 2 weeks of the season, like always, right? I mean that's like his MO, and then he just completely fizzles out and drops off. But I do like the fact that he'll probably be sharing the work with Roschon Johnson. It is going to be a fast moving offense, and so I think that they're really going to be in a nice spot to do it. They're definitely setting him up for success. It's what he does once he gets in, once he gets drafted, once he steps in with that playbook, that's what I want to see. So should be solid.
Quarterbacks are flying off the board. So Chris, I want to go back to you. These quarterbacks, like I said, are going off the board. Is Jaden Daniels, he went the third quarterback here. He's moving up, it seems, in most drafts, moving into that that quarterback 2 position. Yep. Is he your QB 2?
He is not my QB2. He's my QB 3-ish, more like QB maybe 2B. After Caleb Williams, where Drake May ends up, where Jaden Daniels ends up, where JJ McCarthy ends up, is going to factor into a lot of where I have these guys on a similar tier where I'm going to rank them in my list. So for me right now, Caleb Williams, tier 1. I got May and Daniels in that tier 2. And then it's JJ McCarthy in that tier 3 alone after that. And then it's the rest of the guys file in after JJ McCarthy. So it's If Drake May goes to Washington, I'm probably going to put him above Jaden Daniels in New England. If Jaden Daniels does go to New England, assuming that's where they're all lined up to go in this draft, and if it's the other way around, I'm probably going to put Jaden Daniels above Drake May if Drake May does end up in New England, only because of the pass catching pieces that they're going to have around him, as well as the coaching system. Cliff Kingsbury in Washington is kind of a sneaky upside for me there when he just has control of the offense. So any quarterback that ends up in Washington with McLaurin, Dotson, they've added Austin Eckler. Their offensive line is still a little shaky, so it's going to be hard for me to put any of those guys above the quarterback that ends up in Chicago. So it's 2A and 2B for me right now between May and Daniels.
So we had Harrison taken there by Howard, and then Neighbors goes at the 1-5. Howard, of course, at the 1-2. So there's just a little bit of separation with the two quarterbacks in between. Howard, how much, in your mind, how far apart are these two wide receivers? Are they close enough that you wouldn't be surprised to see in some drafts Neighbors go ahead of Harrison, or is it Harrison is definitely wide receiver 1, Neighbors is maybe is wide receiver 2, and he's maybe 2 or 3 steps behind him?
I would say they're pretty close talent-wise. I really would. I love Neighbors. I think he's fantastic. I think Harrison is a little bit more polished. And I'm going for him. What I think is going to happen right now here is that Harrison will keep edging him out. I wouldn't be surprised to see if somebody said, you know what, I'm taking Neighbors. Harrison, everybody's drafting him just on his name, and that's it. And and Neighbors is the better guy. I think to figure out the difference between these two guys is really going to come down to landing spot in the draft. Like really come down to it. Because I think that they're both close enough in talent that just the better landing spot is going to set somebody off. One of them is.
Yeah, I've got a feeling that Neighbors is actually going to go ahead of Marvin Harrison in the actual NFL draft, because I believe that the NFL draft, when I'm pulling that up right now, I want to say that the Chargers are picking 5? Yeah, they're picking 5. So it's very possible that because it's Jim Harbaugh, he's not going to take an OSU guy. He's a Michigan man, so he just
taking a lineman. He's taking a lineman. There's no way.
It's probably all. But I mean, listen, no, stop. You're messing with my narrative, Chris. You're messing with my narrative.
Sorry. Go off, King.
No, it's too late now. You done ruined it. He done popped my bubble and everything. Boo. JJ McCarthy goes off the board there at the 1-8. Chris, of these 4 quarterbacks right here, Williams, May, Daniels, McCarthy, no matter what order they go in, you could probably even add in maybe a Bo Nix, depending on where he ends up in the draft. Which of these quarterbacks outside of Williams, because I think Williams going 1-1, there's big boom, there's big bust potential there. Outside of that, so May, Daniels, McCarthy, who has the safest floor when it comes to fantasy, that in your opinion?
I'm going to go with the Russian quarterback in Jaden Daniels. What he brings to the table outside of his arm, he's gonna bring with his legs. He's going to be able to produce those fantasy points by rushing the ball. We've seen him do it at LSU. We've seen him do it in Arizona State there. So that's going to secure his floor. So he's not going to have to throw it 50 times in a game in order to get up to that floor that we want for these quarterbacks. He can throw it 20 times, run it 7 times for a bunch of yards and hopefully a rushing touchdown. And he's going to get us to the spot we want for, in a Superflex league, possibly our QB2. He'll be a solid QB2 for us between these 3 guys. JJ McCarthy is probably the guy that I kind of drop a little bit between the 3 because out of the 3, I think he's the guy that maybe lands in a spot where he's not the year 1 starter. As good of an NFL prospect he may be, we're playing fantasy football, and I'm not willing to spend early draft capital on a quarterback that may sit a year or 2 or a quarterback that ends up in Denver. I'm not touching any quarterback that ends up in Denver out of any of these rookies.
Oh, I was going to ask you about, you know what? I'm going to ask it anyway. At what point are you looking at landing spot for the top, not the top wide receivers, but like when does landing spot absolutely become that determining factor between wide receiver A, B, C, and D? Like, is it the middle of round 2? Is it late round 2?
Yeah, I would say because of the depth of the draft class, I would say middle round 2 right now is where I would put the de facto of deciding where I'm going to rank these guys based on draft spot, because there's a lot of talent at the top of this draft class at the wide receiver position, and a lot of these guys can be thrust into a position on the teams that they get drafted to produce right away, like Xavier Worthy, Troy Franklin, Brian Thomas, Ladd McConkey. A lot of these guys are being mocked to teams that need a wide receiver to fill a role. So draft spot's going to matter for the top end guys a little bit, but more of the back end guys, the guys I'm looking for in the back second, in the 3rd round, 4th round as we go there. So I'm not looking for draft spot until about that spot.
You are currently on the clock right now, so I'll let you go ahead and pick, and then Howard, you are next on the clock. So I'm going to go ahead and run through this first round real quick. I guess the top 5, top 6, maybe even you could say are pretty, maybe even top 7 are pretty chalk across the board. You can switch them around however you want them, but it's Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Malik Neighbors, Brock Bowers. Even in a half-point tight end premium, might be a little rich there. I think I would have taken Odunze, who went right after him before him in this format, but that's, neither here nor there. JJ McCarthy, Xavier Worthy moving up the draft board as we are currently. I mean, he might be the biggest mover from one draft to the next outside of Ladd McConkey. Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey at the 111, and then Troy Franklin to round out the first round. Going into the second round, you did exactly what I was wondering if you would do. Go ahead and take your RB1 off the board. And Allen there, I have some questions about Allen. I'll get to those in just a second. Howard, out of this first round, is there anything that shocks you right off the bat? Is there a player that shouldn't be there, or that just maybe there's another player that you would have put in place of them, whatnot?
No, I mean, you know what? I mean, I don't know. I might have gone with Allen over Franklin. I think that's kind of splitting hairs. The McConkey pick was actually my favorite. I was kind of hoping to see if he was going to slip through to me over here in the second round. But no, I mean, I think that, everybody, I mean, Worthy's there because he's the fastest man alive right now. I mean, I think everybody, I mean, who's there in the first round, easy arguments to make in favor of each one of them.
Yeah, I mean, Ladd McConkey, I mean, he's out of Georgia, is one of the biggest risers here on Locking with the Stars. I believe like one of the first mocks we did, he was sitting in that middle of the round 3 area, and just progressively has gotten, moved right up the board. I even think last week, whenever Coop and I were on here, he was 112. So even then, he's still moving right on up the board as we speak. Do you think that that's an overreaction to what we saw, at not just the Senior Bowl, but also at the Combine, Howard?
It's always an overreaction to what we see at the Senior Bowl and the Combine. Like, that's what the Senior Bowl and the Combine are really, they're all about. I mean, you can't, I hate to equate it to baseball here, but
here we go.
It's like buying into spring training numbers. When a guy's doing really, really well in spring training, you see his ADP like shoots up the boards and everybody's, all in on him. When a guy is, really struggling and the team is, starting to get concerned, maybe they bring in another player through free agency, like all of a sudden it makes you, you worry about that. So, I think, every time we see it, I mean, look at Zach Wilson's stock when he was at the Combine, because he could throw across his body while not being chased by anybody to a receiver who wasn't even being guarded by anybody. Like, ooh,
facts.
Yeah, it's well, but there is, I know Faith was in the chat a minute ago. I don't know if she still is or not. And give her props for her Ladd McConkey guy, but he did have to stay at the Senior Bowl, whereas my guy got to go home early because he was that good, Enrique Pearsall. So there was no reason for him to stay there. He did everything he needed to do. So I'm surprised he's not moved up as much as Ladd has, but well, whatever. I'll steal him in the 3rd round, I guess, in most drafts. Going into the second round here, you went with Allen there for first RB off the board. The injury, any concerns there?
No, I'm not. I'm not overly concerned with Braylon Allen's injury. I've followed him since he entered the college football landscape there at Wisconsin. What he was able to do as a 17 and 18-year-old playing against guys that are 20, 21, older than him. His breakout, the young breakout age, the production. A lot of people are going to harp on his receiving game, but it's just not something that they overly did at Wisconsin. They didn't overly target the running back, so it's not something that he had to do. It's not something that was asked a lot of him at Wisconsin as a Badger. So the age as a dynasty target, prime age of 20. He's got a lot of tread on his tires. He's solid. He's a tall running back that knows how to get low, lower those pads. I'm going to stay away from the tall running backs that are, guys that are going to run high. It's not what I want, especially guys that are over 5'11", 5'10". So you give me a guy that hits those marks. He's got the size, doesn't have that breakaway speed, so he's not going to break off these big runs. But his 10-yard, he didn't run the 40, but when you watch him run between when he gets the ball up into that 10-yard and he hits the hole, he's got the burst you want for your running backs to get the 5 yards per carry, 4 yards per carry. So RB1 can be anywhere from Braylon Allen, Trey Benson, Jonathan Brooks, and some other guys that still haven't been picked. It's all over the place. So I'm not going to be upset if someone wants to put Trey Benson ahead of Braylon Allen or wants to put Jonathan Brooks ahead of Braylon Allen. But for me, as of right now, as a dynasty asset, I'm taking Braylon Allen RB1.
I love it. I love the argument, especially the whole, not being able to catch the ball or, as much, out of the backfield, because I think I remember there was this one guy that used to play for Wisconsin. I think he made it to the NFL. Seems like was a pretty good guy. He went to Indianapolis, I believe, Jonathan something or other. But he did the exact same thing in Washington or in Wisconsin rather, where he, not a pass catcher out of the backfield. That's not what he does. And he seems to do okay in the NFL without having that skill, as they say.
Agreed.
Howard, last week, Coop and I compared your guy here, Keon Coleman, to Kelvin Benjamin. Fair comp?
Well, I mean, size-wise, sure. But, I mean, you just hey, Howard, let me kick you in the nuts here right now.
I mean, I love him as
could you give me a different comp? I mean, than Kelvin Benjamin? Jeez.
Well, what's crazy is that was on there, and I know Chris saw it when I sent the thing to him. I was like, "What do you think about these?" Whatever. Anyway, and then I look up and I'm like, "No way! I got to send this to Howard because of he picked him now, right?" So, no, I maybe it was a little bit of helmet, scouting a little bit maybe, but both of them out of FSU. They're both the tall. I think the one thing that Keon has going for him is, if I'm not mistaken, he was a transfer coming into Florida State. He had a bad year with no quarterback.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, he finished the year with the third string QB throwing him the football. So, I mean, that's, you kind of have to take like some of those like late numbers with a grain of salt. I like him. I mean, yeah, he's got good size. He's got good hands. And I think he, if he puts on a little bit more muscle, just a little bit, doesn't fatten up, but just gets a little tighter on there. He can be physical in the NFL, which you obviously need to be. And that's one of the things that Kelvin Benjamin actually used to struggle with, was really the physicality, because he kind of ended up frail. So, but I mean, I watched a lot of them. I had a friend of mine, whose daughter went to Florida State. And so they were like all in on FSU. So I was watching games with them and stuff like that. So, I like the player himself. I think, is like, yes, if he can handle the physicality aspect of it, I think he'll be better than Kelvin Benjamin.
Unless the Buffalo Bills pick him late in the first round, and then all of that will come right back up yet again.
Well, I get to make my last pick here.
Yeah, you're while you are on the clock here, I want to talk about these running backs one more time.
Sure.
Because I have Trey Benson as my RB1 in this class. I find it very, very interesting that, depending on who you talk to, very much like Chris said a minute ago, it could be Allen from Wisconsin, Brooks from Texas, Benson from FSU, even Marshawn Lloyd is in somebody's, as their RB1. Even a dude like Blake Corum is in some people's RB1 position. So we know who Chris has as his RB1. Howard, do you have an RB1 as of right now?
Ooh, I love that pick, Howard.
You know what? I like Allen a ton. Brooks kind of intrigues me a little bit more coming out of Texas. I like the player a lot. It looks like he can be versatile, and this one definitely, again, like I said before, I don't mean to make it as like a cop out, but where does he land, and what's the offensive line look? What's the running scheme for him? So I think if we've got a good mix, a good mesh of inside zone running going on with the outside, then I probably would I might give Brooks a little bit more of a look.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel that way about all of these running backs in this class. That they're going to be the second rounders, but I think it depends for each and every single one of them. Landing spot dependent,
Sure.
For just about every one of them. And maybe I'm wrong, Chris. Is there a workhorse running back in this class? Is there one?
It's you can put Jonathan Brooks probably at the top of that list, man, because he does it all. He does the pass catching, he can run between the tackles, he's got the breakaway speed, he can hit the holes with bursts. So Jonathan Brooks can be that guy. Braylon Allen can be that guy. We've seen Trey Benson be that guy. If you want to go deeper, maybe you look at an Audric Estime, not necessarily the fastest guy, not the flashiest guy, but a guy that maybe if he lands in the right spot, NFL team is going to love because he's got the size. He can hit the hole. We've seen him break tackles. We've seen him catch passes at Notre Dame. So Audric Estime might be that one dark horse guy that we see get pole vaulted up NFL draft boards and maybe get that day 2 draft capital that we all want as fantasy managers from our running backs. We want that early draft capital. And there he goes off the board.
Yep. Let me run through round 2 real quick. We did have a few running backs go in this round. 4 of them. We had Braylon Allen, Keon Coleman, Trey Benson, Xavier Legette, Bo Nix. Surprised there that Bo Nix, if Bo Nix gets first round, even back into the first round capital in the NFL, does he jump into the first round in the rookie mocks, Howard?
I don't think so.
No way he bumps out Troy Franklin.
No, I I don't think he does. I really don't. I think that he needs to. I'm just not a huge fan of Bo Nix. I had Spencer Radler, who I actually have listed above both Nix and Penix. So
ooh, spicy. Yeah. There you go. All right. After Bo Nix, we had Jonathan Brooks, Adonai Mitchell, or AD Mitchell. Chris, he said in an interview at the Combine, I don't always, and this is verbatim quote, I don't always run all of my routes at full speed so I can stay on the field for the entire drive.
I don't know why you got to say that stuff.
Is this an automatic red flag? Is this an automatic red flag? Whoa, stop, dude.
I mean, it has to be at some point. You want, especially the young guys, you want the guys that are going to come in and just give effort every play. And when you hear a guy in a job interview, it's like, hey, I'm going to come for a job interview, and I'm just going to say, hey, man, 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock, I'm just going to put my work tools down, and I'm going to pack it in until I got to punch out. I hope you guys are cool with that. I want to make sure that I can show up tomorrow for you guys, right? So let's do that. It's not going to go well. It's not going to last long, and you don't want to have the perception that you're a lazy wide receiver in the NFL, because it's just not going to last long. It's going to get old quick.
So he's getting drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers is what I just heard.
Oh,
yeah, there you go.
Is that team just not going to be like the weirdest mess with Arthur Smith calling the plays?
Well, Howard, who gets out of the locker room between Adonai Mitchell and George Pickens? Who gets out of the locker room? Who makes it out? After Adonai Mitchell, we I'm sorry, Jatavion Sanders, tight end out of Texas, Jalen Polk out of Washington, Marshawn Lloyd out of USC, Roman Wilson, wide receiver out of Michigan, and then Michael Penix to round out the second round. All right, Chris, you went with a tight end here in the third round. Go ahead and tell me about him.
My boy Benny Sins, man. I've been beating the drum for this guy for quite some time now. I play a lot of C2C, so he's a guy that I'm heavily rostered in. You want to give me a tight end that's a willing blocker who's going to find the space in the zones, make himself available as a pass-catching target for the quarterback, then that's the guy I'm going to want on my team, especially here in the third tight end premium. My comparison for Ben Sinnott is a Greg Dulcich, a little bit better Greg Dulcich. So I'm hoping he lands in a system where they utilize his talents and they don't primarily make him a blocking tight end, because the kid's talented, not the fastest tight end on the block, but in game, he's just one of those guys that, again, right situation, can print fantasy points at the tight end position, which we know is not the easiest spot to accumulate fantasy points in. So that's the spot you want the edge. If you can find the edge in the third round, Benny Sins is your guy, Ben Sinnott.
Ben Sinnott. Howard went with Spencer Rattler. Howard, you've been on this Spencer Rattler train for a while. You, Scott Connor, and maybe one or two other people that I know have really liked him, even when the times were not good for him. And the question I had was, if he gets second round draft capital, are you in? I know you're in.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely in on Spencer Rattler for sure. What I think what I like about him the most, because I mean I got to watch a little bit of his games. Like, I'm not a huge college football junkie, so I don't sit and watch college football on Saturdays on the regular. And so I went back and I watched some video on him, because what I like about him, in all honesty, is that he's 23 years old, that he's emotionally mature. And I think that's a big factor to take into a season here. Like, he might not be the fastest guy, he might not rack up rushing yards for you. But he's a clean passer. He sees the field well, and I just feel like he's somebody who's gonna play with a slow heartbeat and be able to get the job done. He'll learn where he needs to learn. And I think that's one of the most important things. And, again, at 23, he's not suddenly like popping off some 19, 20-year-old kid who just got, his first NFL contract.
Yeah. I love the fact that he had the struggles that he had there at Oklahoma, and then transferred to the USC in South Carolina, a true SEC school. And
I was going to say, wait a second.
And he still struggled there. He still struggled there at times, but you can see the growth, and you can see his confidence build back from the bad times at Oklahoma. He,
horrible O-line last year,
right? But his confidence was still there. He was still slinging the ball. Whereas if it was the days back in Oklahoma, he wouldn't have been slinging. So yeah, let's see, where are we at? Spencer Rattler, Ray Davis out of Kentucky, Corley, Estime, Jaden Wright. I kind of like that pick right there. That's gonna be a surprise, I think, when it comes to the actual NFL draft, where he ends up. I think he's gonna go higher than most people think. Ricky Pearsall and Walker, and then we had our fourth tight end off the board in Johnson, and then a couple of Will Shipley at the end, Washington, Guerrero. I can't even say his name correctly. Guerrero? Is that? I'm not sure. Guerrero out of Louisville.
Freak.
Biggest, Howard, you're more than welcome to jump into this one here, but biggest surprise that has not been drafted.
Well, you know what? I'll just shout out to Dallas Bailey in the chat right there. What he said, no Blake Corum.
Yep.
That's definitely that surprises me. That definitely surprises me.
Yeah, that's it. That was the one that I really stuck out to me as well. Chris, to you?
I'm going to go with a guy that's been getting a lot of hype as of late and say Javon Baker. Yeah, he's been climbing up a lot of people's draft boards. Mine in particular, I've got him in the top 10 of my wide receivers. So not seeing him go in the first 3 rounds is a little surprising, but he's a guy to me that once the draft rolls around, he's going to vault up into probably back end 2.
Yeah, I think the other one that I would bring up, and I've talked about him, a couple other people have actually talked about him on Twitter as well, and that's Jalen McMillan out of Washington, wide receiver out of Washington. His biggest knock was that he missed a couple games last year, missed almost 2 months last year. The start of the year, though, the first 3 games of last year, 20 receptions, 311 yards, 3 touchdowns. He was doing more work than Jaden Polk, who was the other wide receiver. I can't remember right off the top of my head. And then, of course, Rome Odunze was there, but he was doing the most work. And if it wasn't for that injury, and I know availability is the best ability, but still, he was still a dominant player. And I'm surprised he is still, and again, I know we only did 3 rounds here, but I'm surprised he didn't go ahead of some of these running backs that did go off here. Wow, we got a lot. Let's talk about Jaden Wright real quick. How does he stack up with this running back class, Chris? Do you see him as a sleeper?
Yeah, I don't see him as a sleeper anymore. I think people are starting to wake up on the player that Jalen Wright is. What he did at the combine, we saw the 40, we saw the athletic ability in all of his scores there, all of his measurements, everything he's done at Tennessee. He's a guy that's been getting a lot of buzz and a lot of traction lately. So one of those running backs that could definitely move up into that second round, mid-second round, maybe go ahead of Marshawn Lloyd and sneak up into that top 3 of running backs. I've seen some people have him as RB1. Gator Raiders, when he picked him in the chat, said he was his RB1 for the class. So one of those guys that's going to be everywhere across everybody's rankings as we move forward into the season here.
He's got good size. I like, I like a guy, and he doesn't, and he digs in too. It's not like a real upright runner, which I like. He can kind of move, and he also showed some good patience. Out of that backfield, and I think that's another super important factor. So I'm in on Wright with you guys as well.
Yeah, I don't think Tennessee, for some weird reason, they gave the ball to 14 different running backs. So instead, it should have been more like a 65, 35 split, and it didn't work out that way. So unfortunately, we didn't get to see all of Jaden Wright's potential on the field in Tennessee, but we did see what he can be at the combine. Howard, who is one player that, when it comes to your rookie drafts, you are not leaving the draft without, as we stand right now?
Oh, I mean, out of anybody,
anybody, even a 3rd round pick, 4th round, I don't care. Just one guy that you are targeting, and why?
I'm gonna probably see,
it cannot be Spencer Rattler.
It won't be Spencer Rattler. He actually is the guy who went 2 picks after Rattler. Because this was a super flex, I figured I would go. Yeah. You say Corley? Yeah, Malachi Corley. He's physical, right? And he's tough to bring down. I mean, he is a yak monster, right? There's no other way to say it there. I think Corley is one of those guys who, depending on where I am in the rookie draft and what my team looks like, I would really, really do my best to try and grab him with an early pick. I'm in, 3 dynasty leagues. One of them only is a super flex. So I feel like my chances of landing Corley, if I have a mid-round, middle of the round sort of a pick, and I'll just grab him in the 2nd round, coming back around on that side, right? He doesn't quite, stack up with the top 5 or 6 guys. But I mean, if he can come back to me there, in the middle of that 2nd round, I'd be pretty psyched about that.
Well, that's kind of the question I was asking earlier. So when it comes to this mid-2nd round and of course beyond, that's when is that where landing spots truly going to matter? Because, I mean, is it Corley? Is it Leggett? Is it Corley? Is it Polk? Is it, Corley? Is it Pearsall? Is it Corley, or Washington? Maybe even Adonai Mitchell in that list. There's this group of, maybe 8 or 10 wide receivers that flip a coin. I'll take one of them or two of them. I don't have to have, the top guy in that tier. I'll take 2 or 3 of these other guys. So if I'm sitting at like a 2-4 and they're all still on the board, I'll be more than happy to trade back and get, a 2-8, maybe a 2-12 and a second next year for you to get up here and get your guy. And then I'll get 2 shots at these wide receivers that, as long as they get on the field, that's pretty much all I want, right? Because
I mean, it's a tier of players that you're looking at, and that's always we talk about that and just drafting no matter what. Anyway, you're drafting using like tiered rankings, so that if you get if you're in a spot, and if you like to wheel and deal and try and grab extra draft capital, and you see 3-4 guys who are pretty much kind of in that area, and they're all available to you. I mean, you definitely need to move back on that. It's always tough. It's so hard to like go in and say, I got to get this guy. I got to get this guy. I thought you were just kind of putting me on the spot, but I mean, if I want to give like a tier, I mean, I'll definitely do that. But I mean, Corley is probably the guy who sits at the top of that tier for me.
Right on. Chris, is it fair to sit here and say Drake May is Malik Neighbors? I'm sorry, Drake May is Justin Herbert.
I would say it's fair that you could put that comparison on Drake May. He's got the arm power. He's somewhat mobile. We've seen it at North Carolina. So I would say that's fair. For me, my hope for Drake May, my vision for Drake May eventually is Josh Allen. Whether he reaches that point, that's going to be left to be seen, but that's my hope for Drake May. That's my vision for Drake May beyond Justin Herbert. Give me that Josh Allen ceiling.
Howard, I want to get one more quarterback question in here, and it's JJ McCarthy. If he ends up at Minnesota or Denver, can you see him moving from in this draft, the 1-8 to 1-5, 1-6, somewhere in that range?
If he goes to Minnesota, I would definitely bump him up. Bump him up. It's such a great spot, right? And you've got great weaponry sitting there right in front of you in Hawkinson, Jefferson, Jordan Addison. Who cares who's out of the backfield at that point right now, right?
Well, you got one of the best in Aaron Jones for a rookie quarterback, right?
True, that's definitely going to be good, and I can dig on that. But I mean, the offensive scheme just screams throw the ball. Like that's the offense that they run there. And I like that. I think if you're giving McCarthy that weaponry, you have to move him up on that. I mean, again, like that's the thing, you put him in Denver, it's a little bit different for me because, I mean, Cortland Sutton's a good, solid X receiver. We saw him, turn out last season. But they've got some weaponry they need to build up there in Denver. And, and it's going to be really interesting to see, what happens, what Joe Lombardi does. Are they going to just pivot to tossing it to to Javonte Williams like they've, like he's done in every other landing spot that he's been as an offensive coordinator. So, I would much prefer McCarthy in Minnesota. I think it suits him a little bit more.
Chris Williams got a question. Last year was a phenomenal tight end class, producing Laporta, Kincaid, and then potentially second-year breakouts like Meyer and Musgrave. Outside of Bauer, I mean, you talked about Sinnett. What is this tight end class look like?
It's not as sexy as Laporta, Kincaid. We like they said, Meyer, Musgrave, Tucker Kraft's in there as well. Athletic guys. But it's got some potential to produce some fantasy talent for us as fantasy managers. Like Brock Bowers is going to be the guy that everyone's going to covet. He's going to go in the middle of the first rounds of rookie drafts. And then you got Jatavion Sanders, athletic guy, fast. He's going to be able to create separation and be a weapon for quarterbacks. Kind of like that Jonnu Smith mold, that very athletic, fast tight end. Then you got Ben Sinnott, Theo Johnson, athletes. McLaughlin's there. There's that other guy. I believe he was from Washington. Oh, no, he was TCU. Jared Wiley. Jared Wiley is a guy that in NFL circles, everyone seems to love this tight end. And you got fast tight ends like Devin Culp. So a lot of the draft capital is going to depend on where these guys are going to fall in your rookie classes and values they're going to be as fantasy producers. But I don't see them producing, a Laporta. I don't see them producing a potential future, if not right now for some, the Dynasty tight end one. But it's going to have some decent guys in the class that you're going to be able to invest in late in your rookie drafts that hold some potential to produce some decent floor points for your tight end room.
Yeah, this was absolutely fun. I'm glad you added that guy in there because Jatavion Sanders for me is somebody that I am really targeting in this. Yep. I mean, had a so-so combine. But what he put on the field and the progression that he made on the field, his hands got stronger. The gloves got stickier. The ball just found its way. He's a huge check down for Ewers this year. That's one guy that I think I'm going to be targeting probably mid-second round.
Jaheim Bell, another guy that didn't get picked there.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up Jaheim Bell to you there, right? I mean, he's he doesn't have great speed. So it's going to be interesting. I think if I were to kind of put a comp on him, I would probably say he could end up a little bit more Cameron Bradish kind of thing, because he doesn't have that speed, but he's got the size of like a Chiggy Okonkwo that I like. He's a little smaller than Okonkwo, but I think that I think he's got the pass catching talent there, but I don't know if I just don't know if he's fast enough for like huge success there.
I don't mind the Cameron Brake comp there. I mean, pretty good outlet for some guy named Tom Brady in Tampa. He was got a ring, so did pretty good.
So Jaheim Bell just needs Tom Brady, and he just needs
Tom Brady.
Yeah, all right, there you go.
I mean, don't we all? Well, Howard, this has been a fun hour for you.
Yes,
we talked about this pre-show, and I did not want to leave the fans out of our little pre-show conversation. I wore my Braves jersey because I knew I was bringing on the great Howard Bender, and I knew you were knee deep into the baseball world right now, and I was stealing you for an hour from that, and I wanted to make sure I made you feel at home. So I just wanted everybody to know that I wore this for Howard, not necessarily for myself.
Well, and I very much appreciate that. First and foremost, man, it's always great to chop it up with you guys. I wish that I was deeper into the NFL and the rookies, that you guys are. So I hope you invite me back at least like after the landing spots are found and the drafts happen and stuff like that. But, I just want you to know I was wearing my Matty O Hits Dingers t-shirt earlier, in honor of your Braves. But more importantly, because I knew I was coming on this show, I wore the most football shirt I could find, that being
Hey Sweezy.
Super Bowl champion.
Super Bowl champion.
She's ready
Put
to
a
run
ring
it
on
back
it,
this year,
bitch.
She's ready to run it back this year.
I love it.
Let's
I
go.
love it. Howard, tell the good people what you're working on over there at Fantasy Alarm, Sirius XM, and where, of course, they can find you because, I mean, not everybody follows you for some stupid reason.
Very underwhelming. Don't
Very.
worry about it. So baseball is where my focus is right now. So if you guys are fantasy baseball people, I'm updating my rankings and the cheat sheet to reflect all the news and stuff like that. Our draft guide is a living draft guide. There's still content coming out. So if you want to go over to fantasyalarm.com/dinger and get yourself a draft guide, which comes with the cheat sheet, by all means. It also gives you like full access to me in our Discord. So I'm doing that. I got fantasy baseball articles in the New York Post. And of course, you can hear me talking baseball. We splash in some football too. Don't worry, over on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday, channel 87.
Yeah, I'm trying to look back. There was
Love
somebody in the comments earlier. Here it is. JFar. He said it's weird hearing Howard Bender without the GM. Yeah, I guess next time, maybe after we get landing spots and we get you back on, we just have to bring Jim with you.
Jim, they want to talk football with you right in the middle of baseball season.
I gotta, Howard, I gotta tell you this real quick before we get out of here, because a minute ago I was sitting here and let's see, who was it on? I looked at Chris and I was like, what? Because on Twitter, somebody had posted, I think it was Maddie. Let me see. I'm going to try to pull this.
Benny Snell.
Benny Snell. Yeah. So somebody put on there, Benny Snell, 62 million, 2 years.
Oh, Blake Snell.
Blake Snell.
He thought it was Benny.
I was like, what in the world? Because the caption was Snell, 2 years, 62 million to the Giants. And I was like, why are the Giants going after Benny Snell?
They'll pay Saquon, but they'll play Benny Snell.
Wow, right? Yeah, we lost Saquon. We signed Devin Singletary, but I got a feeling about this Benny Snell character. He could turn it around.
It was, well, and then as soon as I realized it was Blake Snell, I was like, oh, Howard's gonna love this. Chris, tell the people where they can find you and what you got going on.
Yeah, you can find me at FF Chris B on the X machine. You can find me here every Monday with my guy Gator J, mocking with the stars.
Absolutely. We're going to get Chris to put up some rankings here very, very shortly over on Club Fantasy FFL.com for you guys. Hey, for everybody that's in the chat, I think looks like there's 600 and some odd viewers going on right now, which is phenomenal. Make sure you hitting that like, make sure you hit that subscribe for us. That shows us that what we are giving you is what you want and what you need for your fantasy football teams. For Howard, for Chris, I am Jay, and it is time for us to get out of here.